Hey everyone, this is Rarity's blog Animation Bliss, and welcome to another anime discussion series. This anime discussion is going to be special because this is Nicktoons month. This anime discussion is going to deal with Nicktoons in general. So today's anime discussion is going to be on the last good Nicktoon. And this is a question that I often ask myself a lot. Like, I see it pop up a lot on discussion boards and stuff like that about what was the last good Nicktoon ever. And there was a lot of different places that a lot of people said that last good Nicktoon ever was in 1996. When Rocko's More Life ended its run. Was it 1997 when the Angry Beavers premiere? Was it 2005 when Avatar and Danny Phantom, when Avatar: The Last Airbender premiere? There's a lot of different points about when the last good Nicktoon came around. And the reason why I asked this question is because this is something that's been at the edge of my mind for a while, and I have to wonder about why would people say the last good Nicktoon ever. Now, again, this is probably not what people were really thinking, or this is not what people were really trying to say when they say the last good Nicktoon. They were probably saying the last good Nicktoon that they grew up with. I can understand if they said last good Nicktoon of the 90s or the last good Nicktoons of the 2000s. That's different. Like, there's a more definite end to last good Nicktoon when you're comparing it for decades. But when you say last good Nicktoon in general, I have to think to myself, that it can't be the last good Nicktoon ever because there's always going to be more Nicktoons made. Like, Nickelodeon's always going to make Nicktoons. Like, the Nicktoons do bring in most of Nickelodeon's money, so of course they're not going to get rid of Nicktoons anytime soon. And again, I don't think this is what everybody meant when they said the last good Nicktoon ever. They just meant, like, this is the last good Nicktoon they watched when they grew up with it. Like, I did at one point decided to drop Nickelodeon around 2004 where all my favorite Nicktoons from the 90s went off because I grew up with Nickelodeon in the 90s, so a lot of my favorite Nicktoons were canceled around the 90s. I mean, around 2004. Like Rugrats, Hey Arnold, Angry Beavers, Wild Thornberries, all those Nicktoons got canceled around 2004, and I was thinking to myself, let me drop Nickelodeon because of that. My favorite shows are not around. But then, Danny Phantom, Avatar: The Last Airbender came out after 2004, so it was like, oh, well, these shows are great. They're different than the Nicktoons I grew up with, but they're still good shows. So, and there's still good shows being made, even after Avatar and Danny Phantom went off. Like, we got Legend of Korra, we got Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, we got a lot of good Nicktoons being made. I think if you say it like the last good Nicktoon of the 90s or the 2000s, it makes a lot of sense to me because, when people say the last good Nicktoon ever, I have to think to myself, does that mean the Nicktoons franchise ends or something like that? Because it can't really end because, they make up a lot of the channel's audience. So, that's just my thoughts. It probably isn't a big deal for some people, but for me, it was like something that's been on the edge of my mind for years, and I wanted to talk about it in this video about why some people said, oh, this is the last good Nicktoon ever when, Nickelodeon's going to constantly make more Nicktoons, and there might be some newer Nicktoons that are just as good as the original Nicktoons you watch. Sure, some of them are different, but, as long as for me, as long as they have a good story and good characters, it doesn't matter what decade they came out of. Even if I grew up with Nickelodeon in the 90s, I still watch a lot of shows of Nickelodeon from the 2000s. So, yeah, I do think about the subject a lot when a lot of people say last good Nicktoon ever. I'm like, well, it can't be last good Nicktoon ever. I can imagine you saying the last good Nicktoon of the 90s or 2000s. That makes more sense. But that's just my thoughts on this subject. So what are your thoughts about this subject, about when people say the last good Nicktoon ever? Do you believe them when they make a stopping point about last good Nicktoon ever? Like they said the last good Nicktoon will be Rocko's More Life or the Angry Beavers or Avatar: The Last Airbender? Or do you also think that there shouldn't be like a generalization about the last good Nicktoon ever, and it should be like exclusive to the eras they came out of, like say the last good Nicktoon of the 90s and the last good Nicktoon of the 2000s? Would that make more sense to you? Please feel free to comment below, and don't forget to follow us on Twitter so we can keep you updated any new videos we post up, and also like our Facebook page, Animation Bliss. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. This is Rowdy's blog at Animation Bliss, and I'll see you later.